This is Philippe Morin from ENS de Lyon, and I'm very glad to open this session and to be with you today for our second day of our IISER ENS meeting on pedagogy and online teaching practices. So following up our yesterday exchange on the different forms of pedagogical approaches, either in class, online, or in blended modalities, we're going to continue today with a session dedicated to the adaptation to online teaching. And as we all experienced last year, this adaptation to online teaching has also been precipitated by the onset of the pandemic, and we had to adapt in a few days, a few weeks to very different conditions. So it will be interesting today to share how we adapt to this new situation, to share also the good practice we developed, and also the difficulties we faced during this time, to have a share of experience on difficulties we had at this time. So also the panel and the large panel of speakers today will give us insights at different levels. So the governmental level, institutional level, but also at the classroom level. So now, before moving to our first speaker, I would like to thank again the French Embassy in India for its continuous support since the creation of IISER ENS network a few years ago. And it's my great pleasure to welcome today Dr. Nicolas Gherardi, who is the counselor in charge of academic and scientific cooperation at the French Embassy in India. So Nicolas and his teams at the embassy, but also in the different consulates, are working very effectively to promote and to develop the scientific and academic cooperation between our two countries. So Nicolas, so if you want to give a few words of introduction, it's my great pleasure to give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Philippe. Good morning to everybody in France. Good afternoon to everybody in India. So I'm very glad actually to be together with all of you today on the occasion of this virtual workshop, which is organized by the two networks of the 4 Écoles Normales Supérieures in France and the 7 Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research in India. I think this collaboration started maybe in 2016, something like that, by a first agreement between ENS Lyon and IISER in Pune, but it has been quickly extended to the full network of these ENS in France and IISER in India, with a global agreement signed in 2018, so 3 years ago. So, you had several already occasions, several activities since this signature. We have meeting in Lyon in October 2019, I think. Active participation of both your institutions in the 2 editions of the Franco-Indian Knowledge Summit. I will come back to it at the end of this introduction. You have a student mobility between your establishments. You have also development of research links between your institutions, and all these show the dynamism of your exchanges since the original agreement of 2018. And Philippe said that there is a support of my service, but of course this is support of the French Embassy much more. And in a letter that he sent last October, our French ambassador to India, Mr. Emmanuel Lenin, congratulated himself, the presidents of the 4 ENS in France, for this large-scale cooperation between the 2 networks of establishments of excellence with national prerogatives and in our 2 respective countries. One reason for this support is that it constitutes a concentrate of very broad and complementary skills at the cutting edge of research and training, which makes it possible to tackle issues in a very transversal and inclusive manner. And the pandemic, the health crisis, has naturally induced major obstacles this year and last year, and the situation has been particularly critical in recent weeks. But in this context, and with the publication these last months of the National Education Policy in India and the Science, Technology, Innovation Policy, it becomes even more fundamental to discuss, to exchange, to think together, and to have relevant feedback of new pedagogical approaches and the challenges of distance education, interdisciplinarity, active pedagogies, as well as training by and for the research. Of course, these IISERs and the ENS have a legitimacy and vocation to play a leading role on all these subjects. And so I'm very happy that this workshop takes place. And I congratulate again the 4 schools, École Normale Supérieure in France, and the 7 Indian Institutes of Science, Education and Research in India for its organization. And actually, I would say for its success also, because I indeed heard that yesterday there were more than 200 attendees. Before leaving the floor, I take this opportunity to announce the dates of the next Knowledge Summit, which will take place in India. So it will be organized the 22 and 23rd of November in Pune. And we will, of course, come back to you, and no doubt that your networks will be actively involved in this 3rd edition of the Knowledge Summit. I wish you a very good day to all of you, and fruitful workshop and fruitful discussion. And thank you. Thank you, Philippe.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nicolas, for these very kind words and these very encouraging words. And so you can be sure, and I think I can speak in the name of all the colleagues from IISER and ENS, so you can be sure at the bilateral level of our dedication, and we will be delighted to continue to contribute to exchange and participate to the next Knowledge Summit. So now we're going to switch for the today introductive speech, and it's our great honor to welcome Dr. Mehdi Garsala, who is the Strategic Counselor for Digital Strategy at the General Directorate for Higher Education and Employability of the French Ministry of Education and Research. So Dr. Garsala holds a PhD in information sciences, and his mission in Paris at the ministry is to ensure coordination and spinning up of activities covering the different fields of digital technology. He has also a double culture of public and private sectors, as he began his career as a web strategy consultant. He then worked as a specialized journalist in information technology before creating his own web agency. He has also taken up the leadership of a digital transformation practice of a strategy consulting firm. And in parallel, he has also been a lecturer for almost 10 years at the Versailles Saint-Quentin University. So today, Mehdi Garsala is going to give us a presentation on digital strategy in French higher education system. And it's also be the opportunity for us to exchange with him on how this strategy could have been affected by the situation over the past year. So Mehdi, you are very welcome to start your presentation, and thank you for your presence today.
Thank you very much. In fact, I've prepared some slides, so I'm going to try to share my screen. Don't hesitate to tell me if it don't work, but I think it should be okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for your welcoming, and I'm quite glad to be here with you. Of course, even if it's online, but it's still a great pleasure for me to meet you all. I'm going to tell you about our French experience for digital education in higher education in France before the crisis, during the crisis, and hopefully after the crisis. It will be a great pleasure for me to share with you after my presentation. If you have some question or if we can keep some time to have a discussion, it will be a great pleasure. As you probably know, since the early 21st century, France has been part of the global movement for digital education, of course. And that's what I'm going to present you. But first, I probably need to introduce myself a little bit more than it has just been done. I'm going to pass the slide. Well, I'm working here at the French Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Innovation. It's in the very heart of Paris, historical part of Paris. And this is Frédéric Vidal, our minister. And I'm working in the General Directorate of Higher Education and Employment. And to be precise, I'm just here I'm linked with the Anne-Sophie Barthès, who is the General Directorate. Maybe a very quick overview of the French higher education system in France, and probably some four key figures. I'm sure that you already know that, but well, let's share it. In France, we have about 2 million students. They are in 200 higher education institutions, but mostly in our 70 universities. And maybe it's going to be important in the next slides. I wanted to precise that one student costs in France around 10,000 euro per year. But in France, in most of our higher education institutions, students pay only 200 euro per year. So it lets me introduce maybe 3 key values for higher education in France, and especially for digital education in France. The first one is the idea that access to higher education should be given to everyone, regardless of his or her upper secondary education level, or social background, or financial resources. Education in France is free or quite free, 200 euro, and higher education too, if you go to a public university. The second belief and key point is about freedom of learning, equality in access to knowledge, and the will of sharing knowledge. And last but not least, in France, as in many countries in the world, of course, education means also enhancing citizenship, with the firm belief that developing the uptake of digital skills is a part of it, is a part of being a citizen. So more than 15 years, maybe, these 3 beliefs are the guidelines which we're using to develop our projects, our very numerous projects, in fact, and maybe we have too many projects, of course, in France, but it's the 3 guidelines that we are still having when we are thinking of digital education. But as you know, in March, we had the tipping point. In fact, in 10 days, digital became the main topic of concern in higher education and education, probably everywhere around the world, but of course in France too. 3 dates that have changed my life, and probably billions of lives. In France, in the night between the 6th and the 7th of March, the French Minister of Higher Education decided to set up a small team of experts to become a crisis unit for pedagogical continuity in higher education institutions and universities. And I was one of the 6 persons involved in this unit. And we spent most of our awake time helping teachers and higher education institutions to go on teaching and learning. The second date is the 12th of March, and the president, Emmanuel Macron, decided to close universities. And the 17th of March, everyone in France and mostly in the whole world was locked down for 2 months in France. So, of course, this was a tipping point. But I need to share with you what was our strategy before March and what we have learned during the crisis, and probably what's the impact for the next years. Before this, our strategy was to develop open educational resources and blended learning. OER in France are quite numerous because, as you can see in this slide, we have probably more than 40,000 OER, hundreds of MOOCs, some self-assessment platform, and I have some detail here. As you can see, 30 courses, 30,000 for, excuse me, 5,000 exercise, more than 1,000 exams, and it's probably the main field for us to develop our digital strategy. The main goal was to enhance blended learning, hoping that teachers will use these digital resources in their courses and focus on what does not already exist. For example, answering questions of students, of course, if they have worked at home, for instance, on a digital resource, they can go back in the classroom and the teacher is here to answer question, correct exercise. As you can see in this slide, it's of course much more negative than positive things, but let's go with the negative. The first thing we've learned, and I hope that no one will be shocked by this, but teachers in France are not enough trained to distance teaching. And it was quite a surprise because we thought that they were much more to be trained to this kind of teaching, but in fact it wasn't the case. The second lesson of this crisis is that we were not ready for distant exams, and we are still not, in fact. The third one, it's really a matter of concern for me and for us, of course, is the increase of psychological distress of many students. Probably between 15 and 20% of our students are suffering of psychological distress. Of course, we are helping them, and we've set up a whole project to help them to go to the psychologist for free. But I'm not sure it will be enough to cure all these students. And the last negative points I wanted to point out is that in France we were, maybe we are still, too dependent of Google or Zoom or all the great Northern American digital players. But there was also positive points that we've learned during this crisis. The first one, and I must admit that it was a surprise for me, is that the academic results of the students are not so bad. They have passed, most of them have passed their exams in the same proportion than the last years. And it seems that even if our teachers are not trained, even if we are not ready for exams, even if students are not feeling well, it worked. The second positive point is that our network infrastructure is resilient in France. We have a national operator for network. It's called Renater, and well, it worked. So, of course, this lessons from the crisis gave us an inflection for our strategy, especially for 21 and 22, and probably for further. So we are trying to fix what went wrong during the crisis, and the first thing is inclusion, because we had the how can I say that? We've noticed that from 1 to 3% of our students were not able to connect and to access to digital content. So, of course, all of our higher education institutions, and especially universities, have had made some gift, or well, they gave some computers and some smartphone to the students who needed that. The second point of our strategy, of course, is around the training of the teachers. Most of our teachers should have been trained to digital and blended learning until 2022. To achieve this goal, of course, we're investing some money, and we had launched a call for projects around teacher training on digital skills, and well, I think we are going to accelerate very much on this topic. And the third point of our strategy is of course around the platform and the possibility to have sovereign platform, and France should have the capability to offer to any higher education institution a digital platform for teaching, which is not dependent of private Northern Americans players. So in this topic too, we are investing a quite big amount of money to build and to run our own platform for virtual classrooms, webinar, exams, learning management system, etc., etc. Well, it's a quite quick and speedy introduction, but I really hope that it was clear, first of all, and that we are going to be able to have discussion. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm listening to you.
So thank you very much, Mehdi, for this very nice talk, very instructive talk. I'm sure there will be some questions, so all the attendees can ask directly questions if you have access to their microphone, or they can type in questions in the dialog box, and the moderators will relay the questions. So maybe while we're waiting for first question, I have maybe one. I understand that, of course, each country has its own strategy for digital education, and they had to implement a new approach, and especially during the pandemic last year. Are there any dialogue or exchange at bilateral or multilateral level between countries on exchange of best practice? So do you have this kind of exchange at governmental level?
Yes. Not, to be honest, not in a bilateral level, probably a little bit with Germany. because we're very close from the German government. But most of our exchange and point of cooperation is at the European level with the European Commission. The European Commission has set up maybe 2 working group and peer learning activities around the crisis, but it's much more well, it's very focused on the crisis and during the crisis, and probably now we should have a look at the 2 or 5 years that are coming to set up our strategy. And we need to stop to be in reaction, but we need to be proactive now. Well, I think. I think that Amrita has a question. I'm listening to you.
So we have one question. First question from Anand Kumar, and Anand Kumar is asking what could improve online lab facilities during pandemic. So of course, practical teaching, lab facilities were an issue during the pandemic because they required the presence of students on sites. So do you have any insight or return of experience on this kind of modalities?
Yes, just to be sure and to precise the question is about the practical part of the teaching. Is that it?
Yeah.
When you need to manipulate some material, of course, it's a very difficult part of the distance learning. We had found some solution in different discipline, but some of them are very difficult to run in a distant learning, especially those who which need living material, for example, frogs or mice or things like that. Of course, it's quite impossible to make them in a distant way, but in other disciplines, just like physics, for example, some universities have set up with small robots. It's called Arduino. I can write it down here. With Arduino, a student can connect with a webcam in the classroom and manipulate oscilloscope, for example, or it's not simulation. They are really making the experiment, but in a distant way. So that's very interesting to see. But when it's living material, it's very, very, very difficult. Quite impossible, in fact.
Okay, thank you. So yes, we can move to a question of Amrita Azra from IISER Pune. Amrita?
Hi, Mehdi. That was a really nice. Hi. So very nice overview of what France is doing. I've always been wondering how people are coping with the new methods. So what I was wondering is that this was a little bit reactionary. Our switch to digital learning, including in India, I would say, was a little reactionary because the pandemic happened. It wasn't like we were that eager to do it because we have our own styles of teaching inside a classroom in real life. So I'm wondering, how are we going to take these lessons and integrate them into non-pandemic times? Because we're investing so much money in them, right? So I'm wondering if there's a good way to, take the best of these rather than take everything, because everything is not going to be applicable when there's no, and I hope we can all get back to classrooms and learn together. But how is there a plan as to, because you are putting in a lot of money, What are you all thinking about with regard to taking it much more long-term than just the reaction to the pandemic, which I think will be very useful for the investment, to justify the investment, and also for the students as they go ahead?
Thank you very much for this question. It's in fact a very good question, because we are asking ourselves quite exactly the same. As you said, most of our teachers were forced to go online and in a distant learning. And the first reaction, and it's obvious, is that they want to go back in classroom and they don't want to hear any more about Zoom. They want to see their students. So probably that we are going to have maybe 1 year with less digital, in fact. Well, it's not a problem, but as I tried to show you in my slides, before the pandemics, we were already have a strategy for enhancing blended learning, not all distant learning, because well, as we have all experimented, it's not so fun. But blended learning is very, very interesting. So probably that we are going to wait a little bit. That okay, teacher want to go back in classroom and students too, and we're okay with that. But we are preparing probably not well, maybe in 2 years, the time that blended learning can become a new way and another way to learn. The first difficulty that we had and that teacher had is that they needed to reproduce online exactly what they were doing in classroom, and it's not the good way. We are sure of this. It's not, you can't have a mirror and trying to reproduce online what was in the class. You need to change your way of teaching, and this is lots of work. That's why we are focusing on teaching teachers on digital, not only using tools just like a webcam or a microphone, okay, but how to reinvent their way of teaching, and it's going to take time. So let's take this time. Let's stop to be in reaction of the crisis, and maybe in I don't know, 18 months, we are going to see some the number of blended classroom increase a little bit, and probably for the best. I hope that.
Great, thanks so much, Media. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think we are going to the end of this part. Maybe we can, we had a question from Raju Mukherjee from IISER Tirupati. He was asking, you were planning to achieve so the experimental times needed on site for the French students. I think you answered already to the question it was asked before. Maybe Raju, I don't know if you want to complete your question or if it's fine with you. And we had also a question from Sanjay Kumar Dalvi, sorry for the bad pronunciation, who asked what sort of remedies applied in France to decrease psychological stress on students.
Okay. The project that we have set up in France, it's in a website. The name is santepsy.étudiants.gov. In English, it means psychologichealth.students.gov. In this website, every student can see a list of psychologists close from him, geographically, I mean, and he can call them and take from 3 to 6 appointments with the psychologist, and the psychologist is paid by the university, and in fact it's paid by the state. So every student can have from 3 to 6 appointment with a psychologist for free. That's our first answer to this crisis, and well, I hope it will be enough. I'm not sure, but I hope.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I think now time is over. So thank you very much, Mehdi, for your presence with us today, for your very interesting discussion. So we are going to continue to the next session. If you look in the dialog box, we have also contribution from Yann-Lee Ledantec and from also Sanjay Kumar Dalvi and Raju on the best practice they developed. So everybody is invited to read what they wrote. And so we are now going to move to the next session. So I'm going the floor to Deborah and Abhijit to be the moderator for the next session. So thank you again, Mehdi.
Thank you very much. And just maybe a last word. In the slide, I think that my email is written in the last slide. Do not hesitate to contact me directly. I would be glad to answer. Probably not so quick, but it doesn't disturb me. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deborah.
Thank you. Thank you, Philippe. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Deborah France-Piquet, and I'm Head of International Cooperation at the École Normale Supérieure de Rennes. I'm delighted to be here this morning, in France this morning with you, and to share the presentation of session 3 of our virtual meeting with Abhijit Patra from IISER Bhopal. So before giving over the floor to Abhijit, I'd just like to remind you that there is the question and answer box. So as we go forward with the small talks, please don't hesitate to submit your questions, which will be dealt with after the talk. So there'll be 4 short talks. And now I'll give the floor over to my colleague from IISER Bhopal, Abhijit. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah, for beginning that session. So a warm welcome to all of you in our 4 short talks on online adaptation of teaching practices. And our first speakers in today's session is Dr. Sambuddha Sannal, Assistant Professor from Department of Physics, IISER Tirupati. And he is a condensed matter physicist. And thank you, Dr. Sannal, for accepting our invitation. And now the floor is yours. Please.
Thank you. So let me just share.
We request you to cover the presentations in 10 minutes so that we can have some QA sessions after that. Thank you.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it is perfect.
Okay, just a second. I cannot change the page. Okay, fine. I'll just scroll it. Okay. Okay, now it's fine. So I'd like to start my talk by thanking the organizer for giving me this nice opportunity to talk about some of the strategies I'm trying to follow in this online teaching era. And I would also like to thank especially all the students who were patient with me about when I was trying various things, so it didn't work perfectly all the time. Okay, so my title of my talk is Challenges and Opportunities in Online Teaching, and a case study from undergraduate quantum physics. I want to emphasize a little bit about the point of undergraduate quantum physics, because quantum physics is a very special kind of course. Those of you who are not entirely familiar with it, let me just tell a little bit about it. So it requires a wide range of different things to teach quantum physics. For example, some part is deeply philosophical, like there is no it's a matter of interpretation, and you cannot really falsify or do an experiment. So you try to understand what happened, and there are multiple ways to interpret it. So it's more into the domain of philosophy rather than science. And then again, some part is highly technical, which means you learn how to calculate things using borrowing techniques from mathematics and sometimes very advanced mathematics, where you don't entirely, even if you don't know entirely or formally the mathematics part, you need to tell the students a little bit about how the mathematics part works without going into the entire details, just to give an intuition and an idea, and then go on to the physics problem. And finally, there are some aspects which connects everything, all these abstract things, like, for example, some topological properties of a system, and that is connected to something you measure in a laboratory by connecting a wire with a battery and measuring the current. How you connect these things. So this wide range of things, one thing I realized that a single strategy doesn't work. Like, you have to mix the strategies, you have to continuously change the what you are doing, and you cannot work just rely on a single mode. So I will give a brief overview of all the things which I have been trying. And the first thing is usage of pre-recorded lectures. So some of these things are colored in purple. Those are the things I think is not a little unusual, and I also want to emphasize those are the things which can be easily taken as for future, like when we are not doing an entirely online teaching or something. So first thing is using a mix of pre-recorded lectures and live lecture. The second thing is live lecture. Then I'll talk a little bit about self-grading, which is something I needed to do for some reason, but I will explain why are we doing it. And it turned out to be a very successful experiment. Then I'll talk a little bit very briefly about nature of assignments and course projects, because it's not exactly aligned with the theme of the talk. It can be discussed separately. Then I'll talk a little more detail about usage of various online platform and taking regular feedbacks and all. And finally, the last point I'll talk about is how I organize the question answer session or office hour, and very importantly, anonymous questions. So the first point is pre-recorded lectures. So in this, I tried two approaches. The first approach is, again, something I found works very well for the initial part of the quantum mechanics course. So this is also one more point I want to emphasize, that quantum mechanics is a highly counterintuitive subject, and students face the maximum difficulty when they start the subject. So it's also a very unusual subject, where in my opinion, the subject gets easier with time. Not like in most courses you will see when you go more and more advanced, the subject gets harder and harder. So this subject is a little different in that respect. The maximum difficulties you face is first 1-2 months. So for that section, I felt that the best way to do it, so the live classes are basically some Socratic method, where I describe them some thought experiment or a scenario, and ask the students to explain that scenario, and or like to come up with what will happen, what do you think will happen in a particular experiment, and why you think that. And then I will tell them that why the experiment, the actual experiment, when it is done in real world devices, then how that is different from what you expected in your classical mind or classically trained mind. And then you will see that how you need to adapt to the quantum mechanics worldview to explain those experiments. And then after that, since the classroom is a messy session in that way, because there's a lot of discussion, a lot of crosstalk, people are always interrupting. So then it is not possible to cover much topic. So then I post a pre-recorded lecture after the class, which the students go through over it later. And I found this approach works very well for conceptual parts. And although I thought this could have been, one can do it for the entire course, but it turns out that requires a lot of time commitment from the students. Like the students are attending the class, then they are watching the pre-recorded lecture, and then they are doing their study after that. So it puts a lot of work which they have to do at home. And in that online mode of teaching, students were taking I found they are taking 15-16 hours of lecture every week. So on top of that, this load is not very, it's not easy to bear that when the topics gets more and more technical, when you do a lot of work at home. In the conceptual part where you read the books or maybe think about it, but when the topics get technical, then you have to also work out those things at home. So then it requires a lot of time commitment. So I will, my takeaway from here is that I will still keep the approach, the one for the early part of quantum mechanics course, which is very conceptual, counterintuitive and all that. But when the technical part comes, I felt I have to change the approach a bit. So then comes the approach 2, where I post the pre-recorded lectures before the live sessions. And I expect the students to go through it and then come in the live sessions, which is like a question answer session or some problem solving session. This works well for, again, calculation heavy technical parts, but it demands a lot of discipline from the student side, because then you have to systematically, regularly watch it, then work out this in your own hand and then come up with the questions. But this also, so one can possibly keep a mixed approach of this when the approach 2, like the classroom could be a little more interactive, like where you force somebody to like so do some problem solving session or something. Like otherwise it may not, it requires since it requires a lot of discipline to maintain the pace and all that. So one need to ensure that is happening. So here is a bit of survey of what I was doing before, after I'm teaching this course for about 1.5 years. So I took this survey in like about 1 semester earlier, and I wanted to see which mode is preferred by the student. So it turns out the students like the pre-recorded lectures when the classroom is interactive. And that kind of makes sense, because I think it allows you to discuss a lot of weird questions which pops up in the student's mind, and it doesn't get discussed in the class normally. And then I also tried to see that how many credits the students are taking in this semester, and I found the credits load is quite heavy. So it is not easy to follow an approach which requires more time commitment. Okay, so now this part I'll go through very quickly because it's not very unusual, and it's done almost in every course. So I was using earlier the pre-written because the class notes were like pre-written and I was discussing it in the class. So that was something discussed yesterday. And why live writing on a blackboard is the best approach. It's indeed the best approach because it slows down the things, the students approach, the student absorb it much better, and students also like it because it leaves less work for home. But at the same time, it reduces the speed of the coverage of content and all. So there is no middle way to that. One have to choose one or the other. So if you go through all the details of the calculation and all the sub steps of the derivation, you cannot cover too much. And that is fine, I think, because it's more important it's anyway not possible to cover everything in a class. So this semester I'm using a traditional live writing. Earlier I had a tablet which I couldn't master very well. Thankfully this semester our institute provided us the right kind of tablet which we need for live writing. And so it's almost like teaching in a blackboard. And this is a sample of a snapshot of a page. I usually post the lectures. I give the recording of sometimes the pre-recorded part or the live session, the board work, PDF of the board work which is done. So that is another good side. The students don't need to take a note because the board work is saved in the electronic media. And then I give the references. So that's how this part works. Now this is a very, could be a very little unusual. And so this is the part of self-grading. So I found that, so there was a batch of 53 students, and I felt that the assignments are very important for any course, especially quantum mechanics, because that's the part the students are going to remember even much later after the course rather than the classroom discussion. But grading 53 students for many assignments is a bit difficult. So I was giving a lot of assignments, but I asked them to grade themselves. So I gave them the solutions of the assignment and a guideline of how they should grade. And I, of course, cross-check and whether they are doing it honestly, especially when there is an anomaly. And it turns out that it works really well. Like the students do quite honest job of assessing themselves. And there is a funny comment about it which says that I did a survey on that. And the funny comment was that it's not too much work, but it's disheartening to see the marks going down on their own hands. Now, this part I'll skip through because it is not very relevant and the time is there's not much time left. The final point is about using various online platforms. So one online platform I found particularly useful is Piazza. The other two are very common, like Google Classroom, Google Drive, and WhatsApp for quick communication of some announcements. So Piazza allows anonymous questions. This is something I found an extremely useful feature, which I want to keep for later. And why they are important, it's kind of easy to understand that in a class of 50 students, maybe hardly 5 to 7 students interact. Most of the time you are talking to a blank screen, and 5, 6 students are talking sometimes, and the rest of the students are not talking usually. So does that mean they don't have questions? They of course have questions, but they are not like somehow shy or something. So there is a very good example of so this is how I conduct this anonymous question. It's a Quora or Stack Exchange style discussion where students ask a question anonymously and anybody can answer, not necessarily me. So here is a interesting line which highlights that why it is needed. So the student says that I have a headaching question. It totally makes sense. I totally get it. When you have a question, how much headache is there? And then he says, if I wish, if we discuss this, I can calm down. So that was an example.
Excuse me, Sambuddha. Thanks. Yes. Maybe I request you to come to the conclusion of this talk. We are sorry for the out of time.
Okay, fine. Yeah, okay, thanks. just thanks. Maybe 20
yes,
seconds.
Please.
Okay. So here are some other examples where people are asking some very subtle questions like why you call a spin half and what is spin really? And then these kind of questions are not easy to discuss in a real-time classroom. So there are also some other examples which I can talk about later that you can, somebody can post a question by typing it and you can even equations and you can solve that, work out the derivations which they are having trouble with and so on. So basically I'll skip this part and I'll come to the conclusion of the talk. So the key takeaway from this are these 3 points which I talked about. One is self-grading, another is uses of pre-recorded lectures, and the third is using online platform for anonymous questions, which I think could be continued for even further, even the courses which are not online or something. And that's all. So thank you for your attention. That is all I wanted to talk about.
Thank you very much, Sambuddha. And it's very nice strategy, particularly that self-grading thing.
Yes.
So maybe we can have a quick question, if any questions from the panelists, or otherwise all the attendees and panelists are requested to put the question on the chat box or QA box, and I request Sambuddha to take up those questions and respond to them directly. So thank you once again, Sambuddha. It's a wonderful talk, and now I would like to request Deborah to introduce our second speaker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Abhijit. Thank you, Sanya. That was really, really interesting. So I'd like to present our next speaker, Professor Nicolas Coltis, who's a geoscientist, and he comes from the Department of Geosciences at the École Normale Supérieure de Paris. And Professor Coltis, if our research was correct, your research interests are geodynamics, plate tectonics, and planetary science. So thank you very much. And just a quick reminder, you do have about 15 minutes for your talk. Thank you very much for being with us today.
All right, thank you very much as well. And thank you for inviting me to this session. I will share my screen first. So do you see it? It's okay? Yeah, do you see my screen?
Yes, well, it's blank at the moment. Yes, we have it. It's fine.
All right.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you very much. So this is what geosciences students felt like some time ago. And this is a bit how they feel like today. So the situation for nature-based studies requires a lot of adaptation in these times. So there are two major factors for humans, not for machines. I mean, for machines too, but for humans, space and time. And so I wanted to talk to you about two strategies that allow the students to recover space and also recover their time. So yeah, some time ago we created these machines, And these machines became, during the lockdowns, almost the only medium for learning or for teaching. And so this is a big challenge, but this is just a machine, and this is a fantastic tool, but it has a big impact on the way we can teach and we can learn, especially without so much training for the teachers. So when we talk about space, this was the space for learning for students. This is an intimate space. This is very far from others, far from nature. And when we talk about time, everything is live mostly. It's like for the students watching TV all day from 9 to 5. For teachers, it's different. They can give a class for 2 hours, and they don't really realize most of the time what it is to follow a class for 6-7 hours. It's exhausting, and sometimes it's boring just because it happens this way. So the question we asked ourselves was, how can we teach? How can we learn during a lockdown? There's a need for space, for regaining space. And there is a need also to have the time to organize and connect with others, and also connect with the earth, because we study the earth. So when I talk about space, regain space, reconquer space, having this space, how can we connect with nature? I will present you an initiative of Samuel Abiven, who was teaching a class which is called Terrestrial Ecosystems and Global Change. It was supposed to be in a place which is called Ecotron, which is a control environment lab where you can grow an environment with plants and things like that. So this could not be done, and he decided to change it to a class where the students, they would design citizen science projects. So they will connect also with people outside of the class, outside of their rooms. And the goal of this class was to have hands in the dirt, so that people would be able to connect with nature through that, and sometimes to learn outdoors, even if the time outdoors could be limited. So I just give you an example of what students would have to do. They were working in small groups. And one of these projects was, for instance, to identify the nature and intensity of stresses on an environment by looking at the root architectures of plants. So what they did was first to work on the literature and review papers to see what is how roots would develop depending on the stress, like if it's a drought or there is a biological stress or anything like that. And then they would go outside, they would pick a plant, and they would come back to the same place 1 week after, pick again a plant which is very close by, compare the roots, and identify the stress, something that with the guidance citizens could do. So what they did after that is that they built a website where they would guide the people to use the plant's architecture to identify the stresses on the soils they could be looking at. So it was very important also for us to share. So it's also a way with digital medium to expand your space and to combine the fact of having your hands in the dirt and connecting with the earth and with people. So it was a very interesting project for us. When we talk about time, the management of time, having the time, it's very special because a lot of the classes, at least in our school, were really about for the students to take notes in front of a live stream, which is a bit like robotic action. And we tried to think that live means really life. It means that you are in contact with people, you are able to connect, to exchange, to have activate. What's very important for the cognition, activate the what is important to learn in terms of human relationships. So one way to do that was a class. This is a class I gave, which relied on peer learning. So I give you the example of that class. So it's a class about physics of continuum mechanics applied to the Earth, and the content in a way is old knowledge. It's not really very new science, very new research. So we can find documents in books that are really clear and that you talk about that subject. So the first step would be to divide the class in two groups. So you have to know that in geosciences at École Normale Supérieure, our classes are small. So here we talk about a class that is about 10 people, 10 to 15 people. So I divide the class in two groups, and the two groups have one physics demonstration, a different one one for group 1, one for group 2, and they have documents where this demonstration is it's documented, explained. So the first step is they work within one group and they try to understand this demonstration. And the goal here is to first understand, second to explain, to be able to explain, and the third one is to teach your peer. So the second step is to teach your peers. So the second step is individual. It's based on an individual relationship. So you have someone from the other group that you teach your demonstration, and the person from the other group teaches in response her demonstration. So this is an exchange of knowledge, and this is teaching to a peer. So this is very efficient learning, and you also activate in Duo the importance of exchanging closely. So we use also, it was interesting to do that because the most of the tools of teleconference have possibilities to divide one big classroom into subgroups. And so this is very interesting, in fact, because the teachers can go to one subgroup, to another subgroup, and the subgroups, they can work autonomously, most independently. And it's interesting because when you are in a classroom, it's difficult to do that without being disturbed with the noise, with everything like that. So we felt so the students that working in these subgroups was very good, as long as the network, of course, connections and all these issues. There was no issue. So it was very interesting to do that, and it was also very efficient for them to learn these things. So I will conclude my talk that way, just to say that at the end of the day, we are humans with limits, and limits in space and time that we tend to forget with the machines. And working and connecting to our nature and to each other is very important, and I think it's very important to rely more on training of the teachers than on machines for training. I guess it's probably clear to everyone here, but in these times, it means that we need to take a step before engaging to massively going to Zoom or things like that. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicolas Coltis, for that really, really interesting talk. So for the moment, there aren't any questions in the box. Would anyone from the panel or any of the spectators like to intervene and ask a question to Professor Coltis? Yes, we have a question. So from Arpana to Tirupati, greetings of the day, sir. Is it a jigsaw method of teaching? So the question is for you, Professor, is it a jigsaw method of teaching? I think maybe it's the peer-to-peer teaching part that she's talking about.
Yeah, I think it's that way.
Yeah.
Jigsaw, no, I wouldn't say that because it's really more on the longer term, I think. And the peer-to-peer is developed over like four classes with the two groups, and these are not necessarily things that
can be pieced together and intertwined together. Yes, exactly. It's not. Okay. we have another question for you, Professor. How did you assess the effectiveness of the peer-to-peer learning? Was there a test or an exam at the end? And what was the evaluation indicator?
Yeah, so the difficulty here for us is, I mean, difficulty and simplicity in a way is that we have, I have only 10, this year it's 10 students, last year was 12 students. So making a poll is not very necessary because we can access to the students very, I mean, at the school, we have a very close, in a way, close relationship with the students. So the best would have to be, would be that we have a service would be a medium between myself, for instance, and them, so that but we can share through that experience. And of course, there are exams at the end, and the exams they rely on on working on taking one of these demonstration to another thing. But yeah, it's with this type of students which are where there's a lot of selection when they enter. They already have a very good level. So, I mean, it's very difficult to make an assessment which is very rigorous on that. It's just, you know, from the exchange we have and the grades they have at the end, but they all have good grades. So that's difficult to know.
Okay, thank you for that. Would anyone else like to? Yes, I think we have another question. No, it's just thanking you for that answer. If anyone else would like to react to Professor Koltis's talk, please either download your questions in the question answer box or otherwise in the discussion panel. Right, thank you very much. Would anyone else like to intervene before we close this first part of session 3? No, I think we're good. Abhijit, would you like to say anything?
Oh, that's
no?
Perfect. Thank you, Professor Nicola.
Professor Koltis, would you like to say anything to finish up?
Just yeah, thank you for exchanging like that. It's I'm pleased to be here.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Right. So for all the spectators and participants or panelists, I'd just like to say we're going to take a short coffee break, a virtual coffee break. And if we could all meet back online again in about well, normally it's at 10:45 French time or 2:15 Indian time, but let's push it to maybe 10:50 because we are running a little bit late. Thank you very much indeed, and talk to you in about shortly. Bye-bye.
Welcome back to our next session. So basically we are continuing with the short talk, and it is our great pleasure to invite Professor Anil Saji for the next talk. He is from School of Physics, IISER Thiruvananthapuram, and his research interests span across understanding quantum information dynamics, and today he will be talking on online challenges on online evaluations from biology to mathematics. So the floor is yours, Professor Saji, and it's a great pleasure to have you here. Please.
Thank you, Professor Patra, and thank you for the organizers of this meeting for having me give a brief talk on a topic that, so let me share my screen. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, it is perfect.
Yeah, so this is a topic that has been mentioned a couple of times in the previous talks as well as yesterday, but I thought I would spend a few minutes on that, which is basically the challenges in testing when you are teaching online. So, of course, we have all talked about the difficulties of suddenly having to convert to online teaching modes in very quick time, and the various interesting problems as well as solutions have been discussed. So this is a slightly different one, wherein I focus on actually conducting of exams, doing the testing, which is as integral a part of teaching as any other, because first of all, one has to actually test the students in order to give them feedback as to their performance, and you have to test it faithfully. And the testing also gives feedback to the teachers to what extent they are being successful in communicating what they're trying to do. So proceeding further, this is an interesting graph from a rather large sample from my home institution, wherein we collected the semester-wise grade point average or the semester score of a lot of students, and essentially binned it into various groups starting from 0 to 10, which is the range of our grade point averages that is given here. The bars in gray are the number of students that fell into each bin when we considered the semester grade point average that they got in the 2 semesters that happened during 2019 prior to COVID. And then the bars in red are more or less the same students. Some may have graduated, some new may have come in, but it's the same, more or less the same students, their distribution of semester-wise grade point average during the 2 semesters that happened in 2020. And we see that the red bars are definitely tilted strongly towards the right, showing that for various reasons, once we converted to online teaching, there is a serious issue of grade inflation, where almost all students are doing much better than what they were doing before, which is definitely awkward given all the difficulties we had in going from a traditional mode of teaching to online mode of teaching. So that's not to say that online mode of teaching is not appreciated by the students. They are, but still it doesn't quite account for completely the shift in the SGPA that has happened. This is just to say that even the feedback towards going to online mode of teaching has been fairly favorable. This is a question from one of the surveys we conducted to say whether recorded video lectures were actually useful for the students, and indeed more than 70% or 75% think that they are really good or quite good for their teaching. But again, coming back to the previous problem, we have a serious shift in SGPA that was found. It definitely cannot be attributed to students performing better. And one has to conclude that there is a certain amount of activity that's happening which undermines the fairness as well as the integrity of testing when we have to suddenly shift to an online mode of teaching. And I came across this study randomly looking into, that's from a long range study from 2002 to 2015 about cheating in schools, and the numbers there about the percentage who have admitted to some kind of unfair practice in exams at various levels are pretty astounding. Whether I have not read the study in detail to comment whether this is really a representative sample or not, but still that is happening. And if you look at the whatever scan data is available with respect to online teaching, the primary mode of gaining unfair advantage of the system seems to be collusion of some kind, because there are so many side channels of information through which the students can easily communicate where they can address questions that are supposed to be addressed by themselves, actually in collaboration with several of their peers. And other types of dishonesty also comes in, of course, wherein you directly copy things out of the internet, and to the extent that you, to the other extreme, where you actually pay somebody to take the exam in your instead of you. All this seem to be prevalent in this online mode of teaching. Of course, they are also prevalent otherwise, but there seems to be a increase in the rate and frequency at which these kind of things happen. And so the question is, how do we actually address these problems? How do we address the problem of testing when we are suddenly forced to go online with most of our, or if not all of our teaching activities? The questions one has to address is, of course, what are the relevant factors that either promote or suppress this kind of behavior? The first, of course, is the rational cost-benefit analysis. If there is clarity, if it's pretty clear that you stand to gain by doing unfair means, the frequency is definitely bound to be higher. And the question of your own, the perception of your own of yourself and honor code and things like that are things that would act in the opposite direction, preventing one from resorting to such things. And there are other factors like incentives and pressures, and of course opportunity. If the opportunity presents itself, people are very likely to very much tempted to take advantage of it. And this opportunity in this present case comes in the, as I said, in the way of alternate channels by which you can actually communicate with your peers and come up with or rather gain advantage in a testing scenario. And how do we contend this? There are many options. The most common one seems to be the online proctored exam, when if you are thinking of a completely online mode. But this picture here taken from the Washington Post also shows the other side of it. It shows a student who is so constrained and sitting in front of the computer with blinders on, things that track his eyes, hands, legs, everything. In fact, this is from an article which reports a bunch of students going to court against the draconian measures that are put in place during online proctored exam, which does not allow them to even move their eyes, because the artificial intelligence or whatever machine learning or whatever construct that is used in the software tracks their eye movements, and with more than a certain number of eye movements, they are cut off from the test and so on. So there is a question. So the practicality of this is definitely still under question, and also the legality in terms of how much you are really allowed to intrude into a student's personal life in the name of actually proctoring an exam. There are other options which are available for some topics, advanced topics, where you let it be open net or open book and give really hard questions. And then there is the question of averaging. Do this continuously, assuming that one cannot cheat all the time, and this long-term average or many sample average may give an accurate picture of what the student's real capability is. And then there are remote in-person proctoring services even. And one of the most effective things seems to be randomizing questions, so that each person gets a different question paper effectively. There are some other issues about artificial intelligence that many vendors are claiming they're using in their software for doing proctoring, but one seems to have someone seems to be forced to take it with a little pinch of salt, because usually artificial intelligence and machine learning, it's all based on prior training that the software gets in recognizing what they deem as unacceptable behavior. And for the life of me, I cannot imagine where these companies would have gotten an opportunity to train their software on real tests and then take it online, because many of these companies, they showed up after everything went online. Okay. And of course, and at IISER Trivandrum, for example, we have to do exams ranging from mathematics to biology. I'm sure it's all in all IISERs and other institutions. So the types of questions are very different. The type of answers are very different. The facilities you have to give for the student to answer are also very different, unless you, of course, you insist that everything is multiple choice, which is a rather limited choice, limited thing, I would say. And so you may have to allow them to draw pictures, write theorems, type up long answers. There may be qualitative questions, quantitative questions. Yeah, and to maintain the integrity, the main point seems to be that we really need, if you want to take it to a level playing field, we really need everybody to have really good bandwidth so that all kinds of things can be monitored. But even then, many of the intangibles that you actually see when you are proctoring an exam in real life, there is no amount of bandwidth that can actually communicate that. Okay. Right. So these are, of course, the challenges. And what I have shown here is one of our examples where one of the systems that we used were counting the number of movements that the person made, and it puts out data like this, which seems to be fairly inactionable, because it just tells you like a complicated graph for hundreds of students, how many times they moved in front of the camera and so on. What do you possibly do with this? Right. So a viable long-term plan, just like we are systematically, as in the very first talk and other talks later, just as we are systematically moving to a more comprehensive system of online teaching. There has to be, I believe, a comprehensive plan for implementing an effective testing strategy also online. And one of the suggestions, of course, there are many solutions. One of the solutions that seems to be now accepted as a good choice is to see how we can personalize the question papers for each student. But that, of course, as you can imagine, requires a lot of preparation and work in terms of actually creating a large enough question bank so that you can sample from that and give fair question papers to all students. So there are questions about curating the question bank so that you can access the right questions easily as a teacher. It has, of course, be accessible, and then it has to be calibrated in the sense that you need to know not only know yourself which questions are hard and which is not hard, but you should have a way of communicating to other teachers who may be using the same question, that this one is hard and this one is not so hard. And maybe the answer to that also lies in actually using these questions in the test and collecting statistics on how many times students got it right and how many they didn't get. Okay. And the little symbol on the right, incidentally, is the logo of something that used to be called the University of Texas Physics Homework Service, which was something I volunteered to long time back when I was a graduate student. At that time, it was kind of starting off, which was at that time a project of setting up a large question bank which can be used by other colleges and schools around the University of Texas for setting multiple choice questions in physics easily. The beauty of this thing is that each question itself can be automatically modulated by the software, in the sense that suppose it's a question about projectile motion, about throwing something up and figuring out how long it takes to come back. The software itself randomizes the angle at which you throw, the speed at which you throw, so that the numerical answer you get as to the time required for it to come back to the ground is not the same. So when I joined IISER, I thought we should start something like this here, but then never got around to it. But now that things have gone online, that sort of a question bank or a system would have definitely been a game changer when it comes to maintaining the integrity of testing. But better late than never. Maybe collaborations across institutions, collaborations within institutions, as well as maybe across countries, as in this case is required, to come up with an effective system of creating a structure which will allow you to deliver personalized as well as fair questions in the context of testing. So thank you for your attention. This is a little picture of our campus at IISER. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Saji. It's a very relevant and important topic. So we have few questions here. Like one from Shubhangi, are online exams considered as successful? Students might copy the answer, so is it a good part?
Yes, that's precisely what I guess I was addressing. Online,
yes,
you don't have much of a choice except now to like label online exams as successful, because what else can we do, right? So one has to come to a better system wherein you can have effective online testing across all these various subjects which have their own different requirements as well as idiosyncrasies.
Yes, thank you. So there is also another question from one of our attendees that doesn't having unique question papers again make things unfair? Also, how do you just changing some things in the questions make any difference? Because I have known people who have Googled answer or checked their books in between the exam.
The changing the numerical value is, I guess, more pertinent to the quantitative sciences, where you cannot Google the answer to the exact question, because the numerical answer that you and your friend gets are different, and the system also knows what answer to expect. So grading is also automatic. And definitely for descriptive questions, that doesn't work. But the other part is more relevant. If you have a large enough question bank with sufficient grading or sufficient gradation or calibration in terms of different levels of questions are there, then one can ensure that by providing sufficient number of questions, the law of large numbers itself more or less guarantees that all question papers on an average are fair and not unfair. Exceptions will be very low, but that's a lot of effort, much larger the effort than possibly what is required for moving teaching online.
Thank you, Professor Saji. I think there are just one quick question. What proportion of information-based and analytical skill-based questions would you recommend for online mode of examination? I think you have already answered that one.
Exactly, but of course, that kind of quantitative answer I don't have, right? Because we are still in the struggling to get to terms with this.
So thank you, Professor Saji, for this insightful lecture. And if there are further questions, please post it on the chat box. So I request Professor Saji to address those things. And now it's my pleasure to invite our next speaker, Professor Snigdha Thakur, my own colleague at IISER Bhopal. So she is a soft condensed matter physicist and also Dean of Academic Affairs at IISER Bhopal. And today she will be talking on the emotional well-being of students during online education. So, Professor Thakur, please.
Thank you, Abhijit. And let me start by thanking the organizers and the International Relationship Office at IISER Bhopal for giving me this opportunity to share my experience during this crisis. So, Abhijit, can you see my slides?
Yes, it is perfect. Thank you.
So we had this kind of emotional trauma which we faced with the students, with faculty members, with everybody in the institution. And these are some experiences, my personal experiences, which I thought I will share with all of you in this next 10 to 15 minutes. So before going to the emotional well-being, let me just quickly tell you about the IISER Bhopal, the academics at IISER Bhopal. So we have 10 departments at IISER Bhopal, which are segregated across 3 streams, which are natural science, engineering, science and humanities, and social sciences stream. And among these departments, we have the programs which are BS, BSF, MS, PhD, and IPhD programs running successfully in these departments. Now, just to give you a picture of the size of the institute, right now we have roughly 1,900 students enrolled in campus, and to cater to them, roughly we have 250 teaching and non-teaching staffs altogether in campus. So you can imagine when all these people are inside campus, it's really a vibrant and noisy campus. But sadly, this vibrant and noisy campus came to a standstill on 24th March 2020, when Government of India announced the lockdown in India. And overnight, our lives changed completely. We went from our normal life to start seeking shelters in places, to start working from home instead of offices. And for students, this campus closure was like an eviction notice. They had to suddenly plan their travel back to their hometowns, which were at all the corners of India. So nobody was prepared for this kind of lockdown, this kind of campus closure, and that too, this campus closure, which really extended for a long time. Still, we have now the second campus closure in the institute. So, and at this time when this campus closure happened, we were in the middle of the semester, and then we had to move forward from there. And definitely there was a lot of challenge, and many of you since yesterday have been talking about the challenges that we have faced during this migrations, forced migration from an in-person to online learning. So as somebody pointed out correctly in the morning, that we were not really ready for this. This was a forced migration to all of us, especially in India. We were not really ready for this. France was ready for this for some time, in some way in terms of blended education, but we were not ready for it. And to give you a picture of where we were at that point of time, I'm giving you some statistics of across India, and then I'll give you a local statistics. So you can see the internet penetration rate in India from 2007 to 2021. So you can see that there are some substantial increase in the last 2 to 3 years, but still the 2020 data shows that only 50% of the Indian population were having the access of internet. Rest 50% was not having the internet access. And many of our students was falling in that rest 50%. Right? The other data, which is slightly old but very relevant, is that it says that only 8% of the household which had students, which had people between age 5 and 24 which had both computer and internet. And having computer and internet both is the essential component of online teaching at this point of time. So this picture immediately tells us that there was a big digital divide between the students itself, and the students who belong to low-income groups in India were actually on the suffering edge. So we had to do something about these students, about such students. Now there's a bigger picture across the country. This is now I'll show you the picture in the institution. And in our institution also, things were not very different. You can see more than 50% of our students were from semi-urban to rural to remote areas where the network infrastructure was not really good. And among the people who had internet, around 50% of them were using very small devices to access the online media. Right, so this also has a huge implication because students have to take a lot of courses, and if you continuously stare at 5-inch screen or 7-inch screen, that gives a lot of pressure to the students. Right, so to summarize what was the situation at that point of time when we went for the lockdown, this is the summary slide, which says that more than half of our students had poor to very poor internet connectivity at their homes, and then among these, 70% of the students had to attend 5 or more courses, as pointed out by somebody else also during the talk. So basically now we had to work on this. The students had to work on this, and not only the students, the educators, the instructors, we had to work on various aspects. Many of these faculty members of the institute were unaware of any learning management system at that point of time. Some of them were aware of, but most of them, even if they are aware of, they had never used too much of these LMSs. 74% of the faculty members were unaware of any software which can be utilized for the assessment. And the worst part, 80% of us did not have any writing devices to deliver our lectures. We had to resort to PPTs at that point of time. So quickly, we had to work on all these aspects to get into the online teaching and effective online teaching so that our students and the faculty members can move forward and complete the semester and the remaining semesters which are going to come. So that is when we started thinking about changing our methodology, teaching methodology a bit, and started to rely on this 4-quadrant approach towards effective online teaching, which was divided into these 4 components: the video lectures, reading materials, assessment, and interaction. And the interaction part I will come to later. So within the video lectures itself, as it was pointed out in the morning, there are different modes of video lecturing that you can do. You can have live lectures, which has its own advantage of engaging the students in a more personal level as compared to pre-recorded lectures where students are not really students are basically learning in isolations. So these are the different modes of delivery which were available to us. Both had their pros and cons, and we had long discussions about which one to adopt to, and then at the end we decided to blend these things towards the effective teaching, effective online teaching for the students. E-reading material is something which was given to all the students in terms of the ebooks, in terms of the class notes and everything. And of course, we had to work on our assessment policies, because so far our assessment policies were very much end-sem centric, where a major weightage was on the end-sem. But that is something which is going to give the students a lot of problems, especially the students who were in the category of not able to get the good internet connectivity. Therefore, what we did is we divided our students in these 5 categories, starting from the students which had access of everything, which could access the online, the live interaction, which could access who could access the pre-recorded videos, everything, to the category which could not access to anything. So we have to now put strategies for different set of students differently. So for example, for category E students, we could now think of bringing them back as soon as the lockdown was lifted from the country, whereas the people from A, B, and C may stay back at home and complete their teachings or semester from there itself. So similarly, we started to have different strategies, having more teaching assistants, providing the financial support to the students, where they can so that they can they can have better internet connectivities at home. And as I said, changing our assessment policy from end-sem centric to a continuous modular assessment, which will ensure that students who are having the sporadic issues of electricity, weather, internet will be really getting effective online teaching. So after all these things, after one month of hard work, we felt that, okay, now I think we were on the correct pace. Our boat will sail through. But actually, after about 1.5 months of lockdown, we started really feeling that things are not really nice. There are emotional breakdown of the students that we started seeing in terms of the emails that we received from the students. I'm just giving you email snippets from the students, where from different programs, from different years of a different program. For example, final year PhD students, they were completely distressed at that point of time. They wanted to come back immediately, finish off their projects. The BSMS students, on the other hand, they were feeling very burdened because of this continuous assessment, which they were not used to. The first year PhD student had completely different issues. So basically what I was trying to say is, after all these things, we started feeling that we have to do more. Whatever we have done so far is not enough. We have to now think of the emotional problems of the students and then started to rectify those problems. And to rectify that, first thing what we need to know is the main cause of these emotional breakdown of the students. And what from our internal assessments, what we could figure out is the PhD students and PhD students were having the fear of completing the project on time, the fear of finishing the fellowship before the project. All these fears were really taking a toll on them, whereas for the UG student, it was the academic workload, the separation from the friends, which were giving them a hard time, right? And this was not the case only at IISER Bhopal. Across India, we had seen reports where where students were reported to be in depression, anxiety, and of course, also the suicidal attempt as an extreme case. So now what we had to do is we had to do something to bring the student back to the campus, and not really physically, mentally, and support them as much as we can. And that is when we realized that the communication is the key to access the students' mental strength and support them. When they are on campus, they have their classmates, advisors, support staff who can actually counsel them. But when they are online, they are nobody to see them actually, and they are living in this unobserved anonymity. So we had institutional counseling cell who were looking at the students who had the history of depression and anxiety. But on top of that, we needed all our faculty members who were teaching in the class they were requested to go beyond the classroom teaching and talk to the students about their mental state, about their family issues, so that the UG students can feel a bit better at that point of time. Similarly, the PIs, the researchers were asked to talk to their research students and discuss beyond the projects and discuss their mental stress that will ease out the PhD students. And on top of that, we had institution administration, which was supporting the students, not only emotionally, but also financially in terms of giving fellowship extension, in terms of giving fee waivers to the required student. And these all steps, this multidimensional communication between the students and the institute helped us to reinforce the trust in the students, which we were lacking at that point of time. Of course, the well-being of an institution is not only related to the well-being of the students. As a faculty member, we have to be emotionally very strong at this point of time so that we can help our students, put our oxygen mask first before we help the students. So self-care is something that we all have to engage with at this point of time. Other than important component is connecting with colleagues, community, with peers, the professional networks, using the resources which are available already. This will reduce our burden of this sudden transition from offline to online classes. And most importantly, all of us have to be positive in our attitude, in our outlook, in our thinking at this point of time, which will actually grow the institute overall. So with that, I come to the conclusion of my talk. And so what we have learned from all these experiences is that as an institution, we have to build the professional competency in ourselves to deliver good online teaching as well as handling the student online. Upscaling the technological infrastructure is a demand of an hour. And as an institution, as a faculty member of the institution, we have to put a special focus on the marginalized section of the students and be more tolerant, more generous, more supportive to our students. And that will really help us take us forward in this crisis. With that, I would like to thank you all, and we all hope that this sign of, yes, we are opening soon will be there in our gates very soon. Thank you, Abhijit. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So there is maybe one quick questions. It was posted by Professor Chandrashil. So I'm a bit unclear about a point. Will the frequent continuous evaluation be more difficult to handle for the students with poor connectivity, or is it the case that the students favor it as they aim to be easier and more lenient on them? So what would you say in that?
So when we were devising the policy, we all thought that, of course, continuous assessment is something which is going to help the students, because many of the students are in very different locations and will have different problems. But then when we started implementing it, some students, I will not say all the students, some students started complaining about being overburdened. They were not able to cope up with assignment after assignment, quizzes after quizzes, because as I said, every student was taking 4 to 5 courses or more, right? So that means you can now think of every student will have 1 or 2 quizzes every week. So they felt overburdened. So that is when the communication played a key role. We started talking to such students. We said, don't worry, it will ease out. It's just because we have just started it, that's why you are facing it. Let it go for some time, we will ease out. So yeah, this really helped later on, and continuous evaluation seems to be a better strategy at this point of time.
Thank you, Snigdha, for this insightful lecture. So with that, we are at the end of these short talks, and now we are ready for our next session. That's basically the panel discussion. And for that, we would like to invite Professor Anindita Batra from IISER Kolkata. And now floor is yours, Anindita. And we would request if we can complete this panel discussion in 1 hour. Thank you.
Thank you to all. Thank you. Thank you, Abhijit.
Thank you, Abhijit. And it's my great pleasure to moderate this panel discussion, in which we have panelists from both IISERs and ENS networks. And we are basically going to discuss primarily lessons learned during this phase of online teaching that we have all been discussing over the last 2 days. So I think it's a very nice way to conclude the 2-day meeting. We have 5 speakers in this panel. Each of them will speak briefly about their chosen topic, and then we can take in a few questions. So we begin with Professor Agnes Bauer from ENS REN. who is the Vice President of Training and Sustainable Development at ENS IISER. So welcome, Agnes, and we look forward to hearing your comments and your views on impact difference between social sciences and exact sciences.
Hello, thank you very much. I want to share a document. I try to do it. So one moment, please. Can you see my document? Okay, all right.
Yes,
so
we can.
Yes, I have to start with the beginning. So thank you very much. I'm very happy to be with you and to share this event. Thank you. So I am Agnès Bauer from ENS Rennes. I am teacher in Marketing and Management Studies. And today I will speak as Dean of Education and Sustainable Development at ENS Rennes. And I would like to present the consequences on institutional management policies in our school. So here is the context. We know it all, and it's difficult for everyone and for our institutions, as I heard before. So the context is this: how does pandemic impact institutional management policies, and what are the possible online adjustments to make things better for the students, for the teachers, and for the staff members? And I would like to illustrate these two questions with an event we have every year at the ENS Rennes, and it is called in French Journée Normalienne du Développement Durable, and I will say that in English. So it's the Normalian Days for Sustainable Development. So I will say NDSD later because it's a bit long to say. So what I want to present is first our NDSD. So this event has been made since 2011. And the object of this event is that during 2 days, we want to present, to discuss and work on sustainability themes, such as solar energy or climate changes. This event is very important for us because it involves all our first-year students, and there are approximately 130 students. It's important because they don't know the école. They've been studying for a few months. They don't know each other much. And so this special event is the occasion for them to share, to interact, and to work together on sustainability development. So to animate this event, there are many people, not only people from the school, from the École ENS Rennes, but from the external development, but teachers too, who are going to facilitate or animate the event, students who participate to the event, or staff members too. So all the institution is involved in this special event. What do our students learn in this event? I was saying that for this session, we have to say how to adapt teaching online, but I was thinking that it's better to reflect on how students learn online. So to me, what is very important during this event is that they can develop some competencies and key competencies related to our école. So I will start with defining what I say with what I call competencies. To me, competencies, and to our European Commission, for instance, is a combination of 3 elements: knowledge, skills, and attitude. So, for instance, during these days, the students can develop their knowledge in sustainable development by hearing, for instance, some conferences. They will improve their skills by working together. We are making some team building between the students, so they have to work on thematics about sustainable development. But they have to develop too some attitudes, such as being able to work together, although they come from different disciplines. The ENS Rennes, we teach and we make some research in many disciplines, such as mathematics, informatics, but law and management too, or sports or mechatronics. So each discipline has its logic and its way of thinking. And we think that it's important that students share their way of thinking so they can develop some multidisciplinarity. So during this event, we want them to develop some competencies, and key competencies which are related to the missions of the ENS are the three which I am presenting here. One first key competence is the ability to make some excellent research. Another key competence is the ability to become an excellent teacher. And another key competence is the multidisciplinarity, which means that you are able as a researcher, as a teacher, to teach, to research in different thematics, different disciplines. So that's what we're trying to give to our students so that our students can learn that during these Normalian days of sustainable development. In a normal context, it's quite easy to teach that, or let the students learn that, because we're having many events. So there are some seminars, some speeches, seminars which are made by experts, speeches which are made, for instance, by our students who had some experience in sustainable development during their internship and who are going to share that with the other students. We have some research program workshops which are animated by teachers and which are very interesting too. And we have some exhibitions which are made by staff members to show what our ENS, what we in the ENS REN can make in sustainable development, such as working for social problems, for instance, or working on ecology, etc. So the problem is, how can we do the same when there is a pandemic context where everybody is disseminated in all France and no one is in the school? We couldn't have our students at school. And so how can we make some workshops and team building to make this event a success? So that was the main problem for us. If students don't know each other because they're in their first year session, they don't know all the teachers who will act as animators, how can we make it a success as a workshop and as a team building? And prominently, how can we create some organizational culture when we are so far away from each other? So we decided to make some experimentation. First, we hesitated. We thought that it was not a good idea to maintain these Normalian days. But after, we said, well, it could be an excellent experience for us to try some new tools. And so we decided to use something called the Climate College. In French, it's called La Fresque du Climat. And if you want to, if you wish to, you can go to their internet website, to see what they make. And so it's a very interesting tool, a very interesting workshop, because it's about climate change and it's proposed online. It's very original. So I want to explain you first why we decide to use this tool, and after to explain what kind of tool it is. So first, to us, this tool was interesting because of the actuality of the subject. Because maybe one of the reasons of the pandemic, of this world pandemic, can be related to climate change. So it can be interesting to study climate change. And climate change touches us all here in France, but in India, in all the world. So for our students, we thought it was very interesting, and it has to do with sustainable development. One other reason was that Jean Jouzel was sponsor of class 2018 in ENS REN. And Jean Jouzel is a well-known person about climate change. So Jean Jouzel is an internationally respected climatologist and glaciologist whose research laid the foundations for understanding the patterns and causes of climate deregulation. And Jean Jouzel was vice president, of the IPCC Working Group 1. So IPCC, I didn't know that in English, so I have to read it. It means, I have to find it. I'm sorry, I don't find it. It's something, it's a scientific group working on climate change, and it proposes its result for political advisors, for instance. So it's a very important group, a scientific group, to which Jean Jouzel belonged. Another interesting element in this tool is that it enables to enhance all these key competencies as I talked about, because you can have some pedagogy, some research, and some multidisciplinarity in it. It's a sense-making tool for the students, and most of all, we could use it online, and it was really fantastic to do it. So I am going to explain very quickly how it works. So it's this climate college is proposed by a non-profit organization since end of 2018. And it seems to be a tremendous success in many universities and schools. So you have to work as a team. It's a collaborative workshop where you work as a team of 4 to 8 persons, and you work with 42 cards. You want to build a college with these 42 cards to explain the causes, the consequences, the impact of climate change on human activity, on nature, and on seas. So as you see in the different pictures here, you can see that there is this team. They are studying the different cards. They're trying to trace a map, a college, and after that, they will discuss about the solutions they can find about climate change. So it's a very interesting tool, and so we could make the different maps. You can see there are 2 examples which are presented here in this slide, which were made by one of our 17 groups of students who participated to this college. What was the result of this action? Well, we think that it was a real success, because we thought that maybe not many students would want to work online with us because they didn't know us. And actually, in 126 students, we had 123 students who were present and who participated to the college. And we had quite good satisfaction rates, because 73% of students said that they were very satisfied or satisfied. And it was it concerned 60 answers for 123 participants. Sorry. So we think it was a real success, not only for the students, but for the animators too. Because to animate this workshop, we had to work as 23 animators. And in the 23 animators, there were 10 from our school, teachers, but staff members too, and research students who gave a fantastic contribution to this workshop. So this event was very interesting because it concerned not only the students, but the school too, with the teachers, the research students, and the staff members as animators. There were some limits in this tool, but the limits were more related to our organization as to the tool in itself. We would have liked to have some multidisciplinarity in the teams we built with the students. There were 70 teams of 8 students, and we would have liked these teams to be multidisciplinary. But we thought that the risk was too great because students didn't know each other. And if we did that online, maybe they wouldn't want to cooperate. But it seems it was a failure because students said that they would have liked to be with other disciplines so that they could share more and discuss more about climate change and the way they decided to construct this college. So that was one limit about the project. But it was a success as it made it possible to enhance these key competencies in research and pedagogy and multidisciplinarity. So I want to conclude this speech by saying that pandemic has negative effects, hélas, but it may have a positive impact on institutional management policies, which was the case in our school, because it obliged us to make new experimentations online with very original and interesting tools. And these new tools made online were actually appreciated by students, and they were appreciated too by facilitators such as teachers, doctor students, and staff members. So we will probably go on with this kind of workshop online. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. If you could stop sharing your screen. Yeah. So our next speaker is from ENS Lyon. She is Catherine Simon, and she is going to talk to us in general about the adaptation of institutional tools for online teaching. The floor is yours, Catherine.
Okay. So could you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. So I am Catherine Simon, the person in charge of a department called Development of Digital Uses for Teaching at the ENS de Lyon. It's a department about 20 people with a variety of skills, among which computer engineers and pedagogical engineers working together. I am going to present the tools that we propose to help ENS de Lyon's teachers in online teaching during the pandemic. Oh. Sorry. What was the situation in early 2020? We had one learning platform based on Moodle, a free open source learning management system that you all certainly know. It is called Portail des Études. Most of academic teaching departments use this platform, but not all. Please don't ask me, I won't give names. And most uses were basic. Some teacher share lecture notes with click and drop, and exchange with students using discussion forum. We had one pedagogical engineer who was arrived just 1 year before in our team. Few days before the first lockdown, we decided to install a virtual classroom tool, Big Blue Button, BBB, connected to the Moodle platform, and install this tool on an internal web server in our data center. So why this choice? Why this specific tool? For many reasons. First, by chance, it had been tested since January in its free online version with very good results. We know this is an easy to use tool, and it requires only a recent browsers. Users don't need to install an application. It offers also many functionalities as a screen share, a whiteboard, a chat, a paid-to-share notes, and you can also make groups of students. Teacher can record the course, and the video is available on the Moodle a few hours later. And the tool is designed for groups of less than 100 students, which is our case. And last but not least, Our policy at the ENS de Lyon, whenever possible, is to choose open source tools with internal installation. It guarantees that better data protection and a kind of independence from big GAFAM, as you know, Google, Zoom, Skype, and so on. So we decide to install this tool, and just in time, the BBB was ready to use only 2 days before the school was closed in March 2020. After that, during the first lockdown, there was a strong increase in activity on Moodle. We saw more than 200 new courses that were created, and BBB was very useful and used. Nearly 600 classrooms were created in 1 month. The support for teachers from our team proposed many tutorials and demonstration sessions to help everyone as much as possible to teach, and also to prepare final exams. We recommended in particular the assignment activity in Moodle for written exams, and we recommended BBB for oral exams. After that, we began to prepare the start of the school year in September 2020. And we had different tips to prepare. First, the institution and many teachers ask for the possibility to do both face-to-face and distance learning courses at the same time. It's the situation where half students are in the usual classroom and the others are at home. So for that, we need hardware equipment, little equipment, but hardware equipments as webcam, flexcam, microphone, tablets, and so on. I will only explain our approach for cameras. We need webcams to film the classroom or the blackboard, connecting it to BBB, and also with to the video projector in the classroom. We tested several materials, and we buy 2 easy-to-use models. At the left picture, you can see the USB webcam Logitech, which we choose with a built-in microphone, and in the left side, in the left side, it's the ePivo webcam. This webcam, flexcam, allows you to handwriting directly on a paper. And some teachers, here you can see Tommaso Rochilde, use it by filming also the blackboard. I think that Tommaso Rochilde will present this material and how we use this equipment just after me. Before the beginning of the year, we also prepare software, and we decide to subscribe to Wooclap, an online pool tool. The objective of this tool is to increase the engagement of students during the courses. There are many question types available. It can be used inside Moodle or directly on a website. And probably Benjamin Hua will also present this tool in this panel discussion just after me. We also reinforce the pedagogical support and we recruit a student during 3 months at the beginning of the school year to help with Moodle support, and a second pedagogical engineer on a permanent contract. And this person arrived in November 2020. To conclude, I presented some of the solutions put in place to address the specific needs due to the pandemic. They have proven their efficacy during the second and third lockdowns, although we had to increase the capacity to face the demand in November. Currently, we pay attention to one point. We try to promote peer-to-peer exchange of practices between teachers, and we begin to organize short convivial meetings called pedagogical coffees. During these short times, teachers can explain their way of doing things during courses, and it could give ideas to others. I will stop here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Catherine. You've really given us some nice tools, and I'm sure colleagues at both ENS have been using these, and in IISERs, we are getting some nice ideas from this presentation. And we'll move on to the next one from ENS Leon. And this is a presentation by Tommaso Rothschilde and Benjamin Hua, who were mentioned by Catherine right now, and they are going to talk about teaching physics online. We've been discussing how using the Blackboard is a problem when you're doing online teaching. So let's hear from them and what they have been using to make this a feasible option. If you could stop sharing your screen, Catherine.
Yeah, it's okay.
Benjamin and Tommaso, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. I think Tommaso, you will start, right?
Yes, just a second. Yes, sorry, I was on the there. Yes, okay. So there we go. And all right. So thank you very much for having me, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share our recent experience. I'd like to apologize because I wasn't able to attend the rest of the meeting because I was teaching myself yesterday for most of the time. So maybe what I'm going to say has been already mentioned multiple times. So, and it's really a personal experience. So I don't want to direct myself to any model, but hopefully it may be useful for some of you to listen. So that's about lecturing online and learning from online lecturing how to also improve future in-class lecturing, specifically focusing on the lecturing of physics and theoretical aspects thereof. So I also apologize to the students that may be connected. This is very much a teacher-centered short presentation about lecturing tricks online. So all right. So when it comes to physics and in particular theoretical aspects thereof, there is an obsession with blackboards that physicists have consistently shown over the centuries. I think can you see my slides as they transitioned? No,
no, we cannot.
No, they're not transitioning.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so that's very.
You should go to the presentation mode, I guess.
Yeah. No, so just a second. Yes. Sorry about that. Still no. Okay, I understand that. Okay, let me just do it roughly this way, or maybe I just a second. Sorry, I just fix it. It's a recurrent problem that I have. Okay, and now it should be better. Sorry about that. So, so physicists have an obsession with blackboards, but I would say maybe most people, most teachers that teach math-based hard sciences, so mathematicians, statisticians, computer scientists, and you name it. So here you have some very famous examples of physicists lecturing in front of their blackboard. And here's an artistic rendition of a blackboard, and of course trying to shrink all of this experience here inside a screen. It's a challenge. But not only this, I mean, I think beyond the aspects of porting physics teaching online, there is also an aspect that's always puzzled myself, which is the volatility of this support. So, for however beautiful these blackboards may look, they are easy gone with a stroke of a brush. So trying to fix the material that one delivers through a blackboard is also an interesting aspect, at least of my experience. And I think that there are solutions to both problems, porting online the physical support of teaching, and also try to fix its content. And of course, an expensive one, quote unquote, would be to just being filmed when teaching in front of the blackboard. And that obviously implies a physical presence of the lecturer in the lecture hall, which is not always possible, especially during pandemic times, and possibly filming staff to have high quality result. Well, the cheap solution that I and many other people at ENS of Lyon, and I think all over the world went about, is to redefine what a blackboard is and to find the best approximation to a blackboard with a tabletop support, namely, the largest sheet of paper that I could find, which is an A3 sheet of paper, as you can see here in this picture. Filmed with a suspended webcam, as Catherine has already mentioned, and there are very many solutions that you can think of that are based on this idea. One could be just a homemade one. One I used originally was just a lamp arm with a suspended webcam. It could be anything. It could be your own cell phone or any device with a cam. A more advanced solution is now offered commercially with commercial suspended webcams, and Catherine has already mentioned the one that the ENS of Lyon has equipped itself in abundance, namely IPEVO webcams, but there are other brands as well. So I would say that the advantages of redefining as a tabletop paper sheet filmed with a suspended webcam are many. This solution can fit in essentially any budget. If it's very natural for physicists and other teachers to write on a blackboard, it's as natural to write on paper. So it's really a very common experience, unless you're so used to tablets these days that it's becoming more common to do so. And also, you fix the volatility problem of blackboard contents because, on the one hand, the blackboards you're filling up can be used multiple times during the lecture. You can always move your paper sheets around, and you don't need to erase them at any moment in time. And also, you can, after the lecture, scan them and post them online. And of course, everything, it's immediately recorded as soon as you are using Big Blue Button, as Catherine was mentioning, or Zoom or any other support. And I think the most interesting aspect of all this is that this experience can be ported back to in-person teaching, and one can use in a classroom the same support by projecting with the classroom projector the tabletop blackboard made of a sheet of paper, as you can see here in this picture. Okay, so I don't know if I have the time, but if so, I could just give a 30-second demo of how it looks in practice. So I just stop.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so and show you. I'll say first of all. So here is the webcam I'm going to use. It's one of the IPVOs that the ENS of Lyon has equipped itself with. And here it's how it looks with my sheet of paper, you know, and just I can do a hello world kind of thing. Sorry, which could be more or less readable. One can zoom in and oops. Yes, one can zoom in and show details of what everyone is writing. And zoom out, and here are like some real life blackboards that I feel during my lectures. You see that the space, if you're used to lecturing on a blackboard, the space that an A3 sheet offers you really very much compares to the kind of space that that the blackboard allows you to fill up. You can also divide it, you know, in two if you like. And again, so if you then move on with just use your hands and hold your blackboard and use the equation that you're interested in, and so on. So it has all the advantages of analog supports, you know, even though it's very rudimentary. Okay. But of course, you can do many similar things to using tablets and digital blackboards, and I think that's what Benjamin is going to present. So I'm done with my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention, and if you have questions, I'll be glad to answer to them.
Over to you, Benjamin.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, so thank you very much for this meeting indeed. And so as Tommaso said, myself I'm using similar techniques but with an iPad. Maybe what I'd like to talk about now is more the tool that Catherine mentioned. So this Wooclap tool. And so let me share my screen and show you a bit what this tool is about. So this is the Wooclap interface, and it's essentially a tool that lets you probe and poke the students while you're giving the class, and so this is something that the students really appreciated in this time of pandemic, because it was a way for me to interact with them really in real time and ask them questions. So why don't we go for it and maybe start a Wooclap together. So what you could please do is go to this website. So you go to wooclap.com/IISER, and once you will be there, we can start the asking questions. So essentially during the class I will. I would project both my real-time notes that I take on the iPad, and then I also connect to Wooclap so that the students can answer to these questions. So maybe I can move to the first question while you are still getting connected. So. Yes. So for those who did not pick up the address, it's on top of the slide here. And so a typical question I would ask at the beginning of class, you see, would be this one. So what word do you associate with quantum mechanics? So this was a quantum mechanics class, and so as the students reply here, so I selected an option so that. The words you write do not display in real time, but I could, and so usually I don't do that first, because otherwise everybody will select the same words. But then once we have enough answers, I can click there, and you see it starts to display this cloud of words where we see the answers that you're writing, and of course the biggest words will be the words that most people are writing. So you see, this is an interesting way to I think to open up a lecture and to engage the students into the lecture. And so and it's also a good way for me to maybe probe what is their view about the field that we're going to discuss. So this is one option, and then another kind of question that can be asked is something like this. So what? So here maybe the Zoom is not. Well, okay, maybe I can ask it. Oh yeah, we can see it better now. So yeah, so what is the mass of the heaviest object that is made by humans, and whose position obeys quantum laws? And here, what you're supposed to reply is what's in this question mark. So the mass is 4 times 10 to the power something in kilogram. So what is this something in the power? And as a hint, I provide the mass of a neutron, so one of the constituents of the atoms, which is about 10 to the power minus 27. So that's 0.00027 times kilograms. And so then you can reply to this question, give a number, and so maybe I can leave you up to decide how many zeros there are here. For this mass, and so I will. Maybe I can start showing the results. So here they are. All right. So we have you see 8, 6, minus 20, minus 24, 5. Okay, and then what I can do. So maybe I will leave you maybe 20 seconds more. Okay, and so then maybe what I can do is show you the answer now. And so the correct answer to this question. So I see that many people are so there are two groups of people. So so it seems that half of the people here estimate the mass to be close to that of a few thousands of millions of atoms, and others anticipate mass that are extremely large. So let me tell you what I think is the right answer. So the right answer I think is 1. So it's so the largest mass I know of is 40 kilograms, which is already a very large mass to obey quantum laws, and it is the one of the mirrors of the LIGO experiment, which is a gravitational interferometer. So one of these mirrors you see is 40 kilograms, and the position of that whole mirror is obeys quantum laws in the sense that its position, the fluctuation in the position can be made smaller than the lower bound set by quantum mechanics for no energy at all. So maybe as a final example, I can there are also a list of so students can select an answer out of a list. So classical physics can explain the inner dynamics of what, and then you can select one or more options in this list. Can classical physics explain how a magnet works, an LED, rocket, MRI, transistor, or GPS satellite? So here you see the number of people answering. So I will start showing the answers. All right, so there's a big tendency for magnets. The LED seems to be really quantum for most of you. And then maybe I can show you the answer. So all right, so let me show you the answer. So in fact, only the rocket can be explained with classical physics alone. The magnet, so many people replied the magnet, but there's an interesting theorem in statistical physics that tells you that there would be no magnetization if there was only classical physics. In fact, it's impossible. So this is so in fact all these you see very usual appliances and applications all can all be explained except maybe for the rocket here using quantum physics. All right, so maybe I will stop there. Maybe just without asking you the question, but just to show you that we can write LaTeX equations. So this is very convenient when you do physics or math or any, math applied sciences. So it's possible to write directly in LaTeX, and which is very convenient. Okay, so yes, so that's what I wanted to show you, and yeah, and so just to tell you so with the Moodle platform that Catherine mentioned, we have our students are giving us feedback, and it was really an overwhelming positive feedback for this Wooclap tool from the students I had this year. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Benjamin, and thank you again, Tommaso, for this very nice presentation. The tools you showed, especially the Wooclap, was like really good, and I think we can use it across subjects. That's fantastic. The next speaker in this panel is from IISER Pune, and he will speak on online teaching of chemistry. So please welcome Professor Harinath Chakrapani. Floor is yours.
Thank you for the opportunity. So I just only got to know recently that I'm going to be speaking about teaching chemistry. So, okay, so I'm just going to share some of the experiences that I have had in teaching chemistry online. So I've had, a couple of courses taught on this National Portal for Technology Enhanced Learning, which is a large MOOC platform, which is out of IITs and IISc. So I've had a little bit of experience teaching online prior to the pandemic, so it was useful. But nevertheless, the way I'd like to look at it is that without good chemistry, teaching chemistry is not as effective. So we need to sort of figure out what that good chemistry is as teachers between the student and the teacher, and to facilitate learning by the student. So the basic question is, what is good online chemistry? I think many of us know how to, or at least we have figured out how to teach in classrooms. And today's many sessions and yesterday's sessions really focused on various aspects of and challenges of online teaching. So I'm just going to share with you some of the experiences that I have had, with this Principles of Organic Chemistry 2, which is like a mid-sized class of about 80 to 90 students, as a case study. So just to reiterate what we would like in a classroom chemistry class is, we would obviously like a large board and maybe PowerPoint, a little bit of PowerPoint. But you would want to engage with the students. So you make eye contact, you see, you sort of understand how they feel, etc., etc. If they're sleeping, at least you know that some people are sleeping. And so those things are useful, the engagement part. And a lot of learning happens synchronously. So you teach and the students, or you lecture and the students learn. There are some problem solving group activities, etc., that you can conduct. And all of these are synchronous. And of course, we have tutorials for those who are having trouble in understanding concepts or who just want clarifications for that. So that also happens in person. And we always make it a point to have a few challenging problems for the highly motivated students, because otherwise they just get left out. They feel that this course is not as good for them, because they're not learning much. But overall, at least my strategy has been to focus on self-learning. So the students should be, we should enable the students to figure out how to learn on their own, which requires some level of handholding in some cases. But in others, it comes out quite naturally. So all of these were the sort of fundamentals that we would use in classroom teaching. So now, how are we going to teach it online? So there were some problems. I think other speakers have highlighted this, but this is very important that when we are designing courses, whether chemistry or otherwise, we all need to be sensitive to these points. So the bandwidth is low. So having all your classes which are synchronous, that is just lecturing them and expecting all students to attend at that time is it might be a little difficult for the students because the bandwidth is low. Second thing is that there's no little or no interaction unless you have a 100% synchronous class. Even then, if you have a class of about 100, you have a problem in terms of how you're going to interact with them. The students of this generation have low attention span, so we need to keep them motivated and engaged during these online classes. We also need to make sure that we challenge the bright ones, because that, in IISER we do get some bright students, and we need to make sure that we keep challenging them. Evaluation, I think many people have spoken about, so I'm not going to discuss that. For me and for many others, we have a challenge of working from home. We have small kids at home, and especially for me, I was finding it difficult to record at home because there was a lot of sound. So I had to figure out times when both the kids were quiet, especially during the peak lockdown time, which invariably happened at 1 a.m. or 3 a.m. in the morning. So these are some challenges that we all face. And I mentioned that we had some experience doing NPTEL courses. So the strategy that I adopted was that I'd like to keep it simple. So I used very few pre-made slides, and I used to write out everything with a digital pen. And I think one of the previous speakers said that many students watch these lectures on mobile phones. So if your font size is really small, then they're not going to be able to see it very clearly. And using a digital pen, it also ensures that there's good quality. I did try writing on a notebook, and that didn't, once I was translating it to the class, it didn't work out very well, but some of the tools that have been suggested can be used. I also made a decision that I would not exceed 5 to 15 minutes. So when a student is downloading these lectures from a remote area, he or she may not be able to download the entire lecture if I give a 1 hour lecture, whereas it might be easier for them to download the first 5 minutes of a 5-minute lecture or something like that. So, and of course, I decided not to have too many lectures. I did lots of problems. So I solved almost like 150 problems in the entire course. And many concepts I introduced as problems. So I would give them a problem, ask them to solve it, come back next week, and then I would discuss the problem and introduce the new concept while the problem was being solved. And I relied primarily on asynchronous learning. At least from my side, I was relying on asynchronous learning. So here is an example of a slide that I use. My handwriting is terrible, so I would really write big, really large size, so that if the person is seeing it on a small mobile phone, they would be able to see it clearly. So this is some of the stuff that, for example, that I have used using this digital pen. And it takes some time to learn to write with a digital pen. But the other strategy that I adopted was I would have weekly assignments, and some of them, like 20 to 30% of them, would be very challenging, and they wouldn't be easy for the student to solve. And this kept the motivated students, in play. So they would come back next week and try to solve the problems. And I was very fortunate that I had very good teaching assistants. So I had about 3 or 4 teaching assistants. So I could divide the class into 4 batches, and I would conduct a weekly synchronous session where again the focus was on clearing doubts, focus was on solving problems. So we would give multiple choice questions and get them to solve it. And once when we give them the solutions, the TAs would explain to them how they arrived at the correct answer. And so that was the synchronous component in our strategy. And I can share with you that the feedback was very good. The students really liked the fact that we solved a lot of problems and assignments. And I have a few recommendations for those who are interested in chemistry teaching. I think a lot of chemistry teaching can be done through problems. And I think somewhere along the line, we have sort of ignored that. And so I would recommend that given this opportunity to teach online, we should focus a lot more on solving problems and challenging problems. It takes time to come up with good problems. There are very good online resources for it, and you may also have to go read some papers on trying to and come up with some problems. But this is all a lot of hard work that the coordinator or the faculty member has to put in. But it's quite rewarding, and I can tell you that it was very rewarding for me after I saw the feedback that I got. So with that, I once again thank you for the opportunity, and I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Harinath. So for people who are attending, you are most welcome to type in your questions in the Q&A, which we can take up with the speakers after the next talk. So this is a very nice initiative in which we the organizers decided to actually get a student who has been facing the same issues that we have all been discussing and get the student perspective as a feedback on how online teaching has affected them, what they think about online teaching. So we have Rajalakshmi R, who's a student at IISER Tirupati, and she is going to talk to us a bit from the perspective of the receiver's end. Welcome, Rajalakshmi. You're muted.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Rajalakshmi, and I am an undergraduate student who has taken up the BSMS course from IISER Tirupati. And I'm really glad that I have been given this opportunity to share my views on online learning as a student. And here I would like to highlight on the positive points which we have been benefited during this course of time. So classroom learning before the pandemic was really fun, and we had a lot of peer and in-person interaction, live blackboard teaching and doubt clarifying sessions and many more. But the pandemic has forced us to adapt to an online mode of learning, and it has been a fascinating experience too. And other than online learning in college, we have also had the opportunity to explore other online learning resources on internet. That is like NPTEL, as mentioned by my previous panelists, and even Coursera and many more in India. And we have had a vast number of courses to choose from, and it has been accessible to a vast population. And we have had the flexibility to choose our own pace, how we want to learn, and when we want to learn a certain subject or a topic. So this has been a great advantage for us. The lockdown period has also seen a waiver in the cost of many computer science-based courses on online platforms like MATLAB, Python programming, and many more. And this has increased the interdisciplinary learning from our side. And we have also had the opportunity to learn and improve upon a lot of soft skills like scientific writing, learning various languages, art forms, presentation skills, and many more. And this also this particular online learning and this thing, because of various techniques that are adopted by our teachers, it has been very easy for us to break out of the shyness which we usually face in our class. We wouldn't be very free to ask questions and other things. And taking biology as a subject, as an example, there hasn't been a very great difference between online teaching and offline teaching because most of it involves presentation. But in the offline mode, the process of asking questions in class has increased to a large extent. And credit for this should be given to chat box and also the evolving technologies like Chrome extensions and Zoom and other things. And even as one of our fellow panelist members also talked about Wooclap, which is a very beautiful software. And all of these together has given us an almost in-class experience, even when we are online, like when we are not interacting in a class. And due to this, we do not have this so-called front bench bias that people who sit in the front are able to grasp more things or see the board better or something like that. And we all have a sense of equality and we are accessible to whatever is being taught even in a live session. Learning practical lab work has been a challenge during this lockdown, but at the same time, we have utilized the same time to learn various software skills that are essential, like Python programming, MATLAB, Wolfram, bioinformatics, and many more that are also essential for doing research work. Recorded lectures of the recorded classes have been a great tool for us, especially for revision. I would like to take the example of chemistry. In chemistry, when we have a recorded version of a reaction mechanism, it is always better to revise in the recorded version rather than go through some textbook which has it in a simple form. So when we are revising a mechanism in a video, we actually see how the electrons move, how they don't move, and many more things. And it is very comfortable for us as students. And as we have the recordings of all our classes with us, it has been an advantage for us to concentrate more on the class. I would like to take the example of a maths class. Taking a pure maths course involves understanding a lot of proofs in the class. And when we are learning a proof in the class, we have to write down the proof simultaneously so that we don't miss anything, miss any important link between various steps of the proof. But when we have this recorded lectures with us, we can focus our entire concentration on what is being taught in the class, and we are able to understand, think, and ask questions about various proofs during the class instead of taking notes. And the recordings serve as a backup. Also, after this online learning has started, the frequency of us going through the internet has increased. So we also get to see articles and research work and more of them regarding any topic when we are searching for it. And this has helped us in improving our knowledge. This was not a common practice before the pandemic. And also in this online era, and we have seen a lot of international collaborations for research work, even in what we do in undergraduate level. So in conclusion, online learning has a lot of advantage, but Blackboard and classroom learning has its own merit. So in the way forward, after the pandemic, in my opinion, a combination of online and offline learning would be great. An example of this would be like learning the concepts through online pre-recorded videos or through online live classes, and then meeting in person in classroom to discuss assignments, clarify doubts and other things, because that involves more of a peer interaction and interpersonal interaction. Globally, the online learning has tested our robustness, improved technology, and also enhanced our visualization of concepts, and ultimately helped us acquire a lot of more knowledge, in my view. And with the technological development and the increasing opportunities across the world, online learning, along with personal interactions, will take us a step forward. At last, I'd like to thank everyone for giving me this opportunity to present in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajalakshmi. That was quite concise and very positive. You kept out all the negativities from your presentation. So are there any questions for any of the panelists? If anybody wants to ask a question, you can please type it in the Q&A or even in the chat. Okay, while we are waiting for questions from the participants, I have a couple of questions for the panelists, so maybe I'll get started. I wanted to ask people who have been teaching online using the digital devices. For example, when Tommaso was mostly talking about using paper, but Benjamin, you were talking about using the digital blackboard, or even Harinath, you were talking about that we have often heard students complain about. Of course, you said you could keep your videos quite short, and that helps in downloading. Or even Rajalakshmi, when you are saying that you could go back to the recorded videos. All of this requires a lot of space in your device, a good bandwidth to download a lecture, and people who are in remote areas still face problems. So as I understand, many people are suggesting that even when we can have in-person classes, maybe having a mix of both online and offline would be beneficial. But how do you, how do you bridge this huge digital divide? Because that's something which has been a constant problem in India. It's not only that people are not able to attend the classes which are during a particular time, they are not able to access material online, they are not able to download stuff. So eventually we have to rely on the internet. And if somebody does not have a gadget which is able to access the internet, or does not have enough space on a device to download 15 lectures each for 5 subjects, then how do we help the students? Anyone who would.
I don't know. I mean, I never tried this myself, but I could imagine that you, instead of just putting videos online, you can put just the audio part of them, which is much lighter, and supplemented with whatever you wrote, with your blackboards, digital or analog, however they like, however they can be, which are typically light PDF files. So this way you really reduce by a factor of 10 or more the amount of bits that people have to download. Whether this is as effective as watching a video, I don't know. But if you listening to the audio and you can reconstruct the sequence of information that the lecturer has delivered while filling up his or her blackboards, I think that they may do it. It's probably a downgraded version of a recorded lecture, but could be an option.
I can see a hand raised by Shambhu. I'll take that and come back to you, Harinath.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, this is something I also realized that when the lockdown happened suddenly, at that time the students were taking 5 lectures each day and they had like 1.5 GB per day total of internet bandwidth. So I used a lot of pre-recorded lectures, which is something what Thomas also said, I didn't appear in the video, so it is just handwritten pre-recorded lectures using a tablet and not live, because that time I didn't have a live writing setup. And each video was hardly 50 to 60 MB. A 45-minute video was 50, 60 MB. And it was quite manageable using that pre-recorded lecture for such. And that is why I think pre-recorded lecture should be a tool which should always be kept like that. And for those folks who doesn't have that much internet volume.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I did exactly the same thing. So my face did not show up in the lectures. So I reduced the content. But the important thing I feel is that now these lectures are available with us. And one can, because if you're planning to teach a similar course or identical course next year, one can make use of these lectures as well, and of course supplement, edit, etc. But these can be sent physically to the student in the event that the student is really facing bandwidth issues. So and along with that, if some notes, etc., can be given, I think that might help solve the digital or bridge the digital divide.
Right. Thank you. And I see in the chat that people in IISER Pune have been doing the same. We have, many of us, taken the same route in IISER Kolkata. So I guess we are all converging on the same lines of thought. So Neelkamal Chauhan has a question and a comment. He says, I think online learning is only good during the pandemic and not after that. And he says that he has a question for France. That in France, it's not required to give homework to students. Is that true? How does the system work?
Yes, so I guess it really depends on the institute, right? So indeed, if you're discussing about very young children, so indeed in elementary school, they are not the teachers are not required to give students, kids homework, but at universities there's no such requirement, at least not that I know of. So we are giving them homework, yes, but maybe I don't know, Tommaso, do you?
Well, actually, a system that we have set up now, Benjamin and other teachers, is that we give points if you work in advance exercise sheets. So in principle, there are recitation classes, of course, and exercise sheets that are given weekly. But the students, they kind of have a cool attitude towards them. So some prepare them, some not, and they just listen to their colleagues solving problems in the class. Those that volunteered and prepared them. But now we try to encourage this, and And then it's becoming, for some students, sort of a moral obligation to actually prepare them in advance, because they can get points and then they can score as high as their colleagues. So it's kind of a positive homework. It's not a constrained one, but it's a bonus.
Thank you. So we conclude this session because we are already running a bit late, I guess. Let me thank all the panelists for taking their time out and sharing their experiences with us. And special thanks to Rajalakshmi, because you actually gave us very nice feedback from the perspective of the students and how online teaching has been good for you, because we have talked about all the negative issues, I guess, all through the day. So let me conclude here. Thanks, everyone. And I hand over to the moderators for the whole session.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Professor Bhadra, for wonderfully coordinating this insightful panel discussion. It's extremely informative, and we get to know many different things, many different techniques. So now it's the end of our network meeting. We are close to the end session, and it's a great pleasure to be part of this wonderful meeting, and also be a part of that ENS IISER network. And we would like to thank all the members who made this meeting possible. And we would like to thank all the speakers, all the moderators, all panelists, our keynote speakers, and French Embassy in India, and also higher administrations of ENS and IISERs to support us conducting this meeting. I also thank Amrita and Hari, our colleagues from IISER Pune, who actually laid the foundation of such kind of a meeting during our last network meeting in Lyon. And a special thanks to Karine and Tristan for making it possible. So they are the behind of all the network issues and coordinating it in a wonderful manner. And on my personal behalf, it's also a great feeling when I was doing my postdoc in ENS Paris-Saclay. Jonathan was a second-year PhD student in 2009-10, and now he has developed a wonderful online education platform. It's a great pleasure to see that one. And moving forward from this meeting, I think Philip will briefly mention way forward of our network meeting. On my personal behalf, I feel that apart from our students' internship, we may think of like more joint courses along with credit transfer, which was mentioned by Hari yesterday. And along the same line, the dual degree PhD program, which is still a lot of hurdles are there. Some of the things has to be discussed further to make it possible. And also this kind of short department specific meeting in future probably will help us to know each other and make the things more progressive. So with that, I would like to thank you all again, and now request all the panelists to switch on their video so that we can take a group photograph. And I would also request Karim to help us in that case, and then request Philip to take over for his concluding remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhijit. So shall we finish with the concluding remarks and take the photo at the end?
Yeah, that's perfect. Philip, please go ahead.
Okay. So thank you, Abhijit, again for these conclusion words. So as I associate myself with you and to all the thanks expressed, it has been two very rich and interesting days of exchange. And I also thank the colleagues for manage the technical side of this meeting. Also on the Indian side for the YouTube broadcast on the same time that our Zoom meeting. And we hope that the sanitary situation will now evolve in the good way in the next few weeks and months to allow physical meetings next time. So in the meantime, don't hesitate, because we have seen during these 2 days, so don't hesitate to take advantage that now online classes can be organized as a routine. So it's quite easy now to exchange parts of course with a French or an Indian colleague. So you can just experiment to exchange 2 hours of class with a French or an Indian colleague with your students. And it's very easy to organize. It has been done very successfully between Pune and Lyon a few weeks ago. And so in case you are interested and you didn't have identified someone, a colleague yet in your discipline, please share the information and we can manage to facilitate the connection. And to finish, I would like to say also a few words on the future roadmap. So Abhijit talked about the internship. So we need to continue to develop the internships in both ways, from France to India and India to France, and also to work on the continuum master PhD and see how our network will evolve into kind of joint master PhD degrees in the future. And first, now I think we will produce in the next few days a summary of the conclusions of this 2-day exchange. So we will see how we can produce this document collectively, because these conclusions of these 2 days will be very important and useful, because the next important deadline, as Nicolas Gerardi from the French Embassy said, this deadline will be the bilateral knowledge summit that will be organized next November by our 2 ministries of research and education. And this summit will be a good opportunity for us, for our network, to continue what we started today and yesterday, and to propose to the organizers of this summit to be an active part by sharing our work, our thinkings, and our conclusions. So we have also, and we don't have to forget this, we have also the project to organize more disciplinary meetings in the next few months, with the idea to try to connect our discussions to the global challenges and societal issues and be proactive on this subject. So we have many things to do, many projects to do, and we can be happy of this very active network and very active exchange on every part. So we are very, very glad of this, and we look forward for our next meeting. So I won't say much more now. I don't know if any of our colleagues from IISER or ENS want to say something, or we can switch to the group photo.